Sparx here with a hip hooping tutorial for you. This was requested by somebody on Instagram, and so I decided to fulfill that request. Alright, so slightly different movement with hip hooping to waist hooping. So waist hooping, we usually have a bit of a forward and back, or some of us have a side to side. Now, all of these things can work with hip hooping as well, but it's a slightly different sensation. So to get started, let's start with what I think is the easiest way to learn hip hooping, and that's going to be a side to side. Now, when we're doing side to side on our waist, I feel like we tend to move quite a lot of our hips and our legs into that side to side motion. When we're on our hips, I feel like there's like a little bit more of like this kind of wiggle that needs to happen. Yeah? So I'll show you a little bit closer exactly what I mean, and then we'll pop the hoop on. Okay, so when the hoop's around our waist and we go side to side, we don't tend to do this kind of wiggle so much or the hoop falls down. What we tend to do is more of like a whole section, this whole section of our body goes side to side. Yeah? Like this. Once it gets onto our hips, we want to come into more of like this little kind of a wiggle, yeah? So it's a little bit more bent knees and wiggle, 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 wiggle. So hips, waist, we're side to side. And then as it comes down, we want to catch it in this wiggle. Now, there's a sweet spot that we aim for when we are hip hooping. I'm just going to show you that close up as well. So the sweet spot is if you touch the tip of your hip bone and creepy crawl your fingers down the front of your hip bone, you'll hit like this squishy bit. There's like this little squishy bit right there. That's our sweet spot for hip hooping. It's almost like there's a groove made exactly for the hula hoop. So on the waist, let it slow enough that it just starts to fall down, and then try and catch it in your sweet squishy spot on your hips with this side to side wiggle from the side and from the back. Okay, so some of the troubleshooting tips on this, and these troubleshooting tips apply for all the different methods of keeping the hoop going on your hips, and we are just starting with this side to side wiggle. My knees are bent and I'm pushing my hips side to side and trying to keep my upper body from getting too out of control. Yeah, so we just want this side to side wiggle. Sometimes what happens, if you wiggle too big, it's gonna come up. Or if you wiggle too hard, it's gonna come up. Or if you kind of wiggle like a bit too cash, it's gonna go down. And if you wiggle out of time, it's also going to fall down. Yeah, so we want to find the sweet squishy spot at the front of our hips, and we want to find this wiggle that matches the rhythm of the hoop. Once you've had a little practice at that and got used to that going in this side to side motion, the level up, or like the challenge, just like when we're on our waist, is to go into a forward back motion with our feet together. So we start to work on this really refined kind of muscle control. All right, so let's have a look at the forward back version. So the kind of level up of hip hooping, just like with waist hooping, side to side is sometimes a bit more cash, feet apart. As soon as we go into a forward back motion, feet together, it's like the moment of truth. And it's the same with hip hooping as well. So I'm going to bring my legs together, not that you can see them, but they are together. I'm going to let the hoop come onto my hips, and I'm doing this 1-2, 1-2 knee bend to get my hips to wiggle. So I'll show you what's happening in my legs. So around the waist, drop it to the hips and catch it with this 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 from the side. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. Once you get the hang of that, we want to start going into this forward back push from the hips. So my knees are straight. It's a little bit quicker doing this. And I'm moving my hips forward and back. That was a little circle I just did then to stop it falling. And I'm going to catch the rhythm with my hips from the back and the side. Okay, so there's 3 versions that we've worked on now. We have worked on feet apart, side to side wiggle on our hips, looking for that sweet spot, that squishy little part on the front of our hips. Yeah, we've got our side to side. And then we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 with the knee bend. And then next, so we're going to go for this really strong forward back push. Yeah, and the same troubleshooting applies all the way through. So if it starts to pop up to your waist, it's probably because you've given it a bit of a bit too much energy. And if it starts to pop down, it's probably because you haven't given it enough. We are out of rhythm with the hoop. Yeah? So I hope you got it. If you liked it, please do share it or click on subscribe and the little bell button so you get notified when I release new tutorials. Enjoy your wiggly wiggly hip hooping, and I'll see you next time.